These are the MCI Classics, the express buses of the private bus lines. Now, they were ordered for the NYC DOT for express bus service. The private bus lines embraced the MCI Classic, as they did earlier with the fleets of the new RTSs for the Brooklyn and Queens private bus lines. And in 1988, NYC DOT purchased 332 MCI Classics for express bus service. The Classic debuted in 1982 under General Motors as basically an updated version of the GMC New Look, originally made exclusively for Canadian transit authorities who shunned the RTS since the RTS didn't really do well up north. But the Classic proved to be popular in the U.S. as Salt Lake City, Utah became the first city in the United States to receive the GM Classic in 1984. This was later followed by Detroit DDOT, Grand Rapids, Connecticut Transit, and Santa Monica. The Classic was produced by three manufacturers: GM from 1983 to 87, MCI from 1987 to 93, and finally Novabus from 1993 to 97. And MCI and Novabus also included limited edition 60-foot articulated Classics. Anyway, back to the private bus lines. New York City was the best known city in the U.S. to have the Suburban single-door Classics. All 7 private bus lines acquired new MCI Classics, and most of these Classics were Suburban and were equipped with single doors, along with forward-facing 2x2 seats on raised platforms, as well as overhead luggage racks. The Classic became very popular with New York City area riders who lived in the outer boroughs and lower Westchester County. These routes offered passengers relatively quick and comfortable one-seat service directly into the Manhattan Central Business District. Routes such as the BXM, BM, and QM routes. These routes often require periods of high-speed operation on congested expressways, which was an assignment that was ill-suited for the RTSs of that time. Now, so without further ado, let's go to the list of private bus lines and fleet numbers of these MCI Classics. Here we go. So 1600 to 1709 were delivered to New York Bus Service and were painted in red, white, and blue, with 1600 to 1602 being 1984 GM Classics, 1604 to 1697 being 1988 MCI Classics, and 1700 to 1709 being 1989 MCI Classics. The Bronx-based carrier operated the second largest fleet of MCI Classics. Anyway, 3001 to 3110 were delivered to Liberty Lines Express and were painted in a sharp red and white scheme, with 3001 to 3091 being 1988 models and 3101 to 3110 being 1989 models. 421 to 461 were delivered to Command Bus Company and were painted in green and yellow, while 900 to 949 were delivered to Queen Surface Corp and were painted in orange and white. 764 to 794 were delivered to Triborough Coach and were painted in red and beige, while some were later given the red and gray lightning bolt, while 601 to 608 were delivered to Jamaica Bus. Now, Jamaica Bus received the smallest Classic fleet and were painted in maroon, tan, and brown. And 608 was considered a Classic since it featured the rear door. Well, last but not least, 701 to 716 were delivered to Green Lines and were painted in green, of course. Also, Green Bus Lines had the most unique Classic fleet. For example, 701 to 704 were Suburban and had single doors, while 705 to 716 had 2 doors, just like 608 from Jamaica Bus. Green Lines Classics had soft seats, but not on risers, and operated on both local and express service, regardless of the rear door configuration. New York Bus Service Classics 1687, 1689, and 1697 were later transferred to Command and were numbered as 471, 462 to 470. 1687, 1693, and 1695 later returned to New York Bus Service and were renumbered as 1688, 1696 to 1697. And 1688 and 1696 received an alternative paint scheme as seen in these photos of 1696. Command Classics 429, 435, 450, 453, 456 to 457, and 459 were acquired by New York Bus Service and were renumbered as 1689 to 1695. And 1711 to 1712 were ex-Triborough coach units 768 to 780. Then were transferred to green lines and numbered as 717 to 718. 1715 to 1716 were also ex-green line units numbered as 703 to 704. Then were transferred to New York bus service along with 717 and 718 as an exchange for 4 Orion 5 Suburbans. Liberty Line Classics 3077 to 3081 were given to Queen Surface Corp and were renumbered as 950 to 954. However, 950 was returned to Liberty Lines and was renumbered as 3077 again. 3081 to 3091 were transferred to Command and were numbered as 472 to 481. So these classics were built under the model number TC40102A, with the 40 indicating the length of the bus and the 102 indicating the width, and the A standing for air conditioning, of course. New York bus service 1600 to 1602 were GM classics, and those signify the use of the Detroit Diesel 6B71 engine, which sounds like this. The MCI classics signified the use of the Detroit Diesel 6B92 engine, which sounds like this. What I liked about the MCI classics is that they had a variety of sounds. None of them sounded the same. For example, some of them were loud. Some of them were quiet. While some had a little bit of everything. I have so many memories of riding these classics, from Liberty Lines Express and New York bus service mostly, though occasionally I did ride on the classics from the other private lines as well. The Liberty Line classics had a lot of power, and some of them sounded crazy good. Thank God 3006 has been preserved in the museum fleet to prove it. When MTA Bus took over the private bus lines, most classics were retained and renumbered, and by 2005, 327 classics remained in service. So, here's a list of classics that got renumbered. 329 to 379 were ex-Command units, while 1164 to 1171 were ex-Jamaica units. 5880 to 5893 were ex-Green Line units, while 7311 to 7422 were ex-New York bus service units. 7820 to 7905 were ex-Liberty Line units, while last but not least, 9796 to 9826 were ex-Queen Surface units. Unfortunately, the Triborough Coach Classics didn't survive the takeover and were scrapped almost instantly, and the ex-Command, Queen Surface, and Jamaica units didn't last very long either. A majority of the former Liberty Line and New York Bus Service Classics were later repainted in blue and white, while 2 ex-Green Line Classics got repainted as well. 5887 was the only two-door classic to be fully repainted in blue and white, while 5882 was given a rather half-assed paint scheme. In other words, the front was painted blue and white, while the sides remained green. It is sad to say that these buses are now retired, but in 2007, some ex-Liberty and New York Bus Service Classics were brought back into service because they were ADA compliant, which meant that they were wheelchair accessible, and they lasted until about the end of 2009. And I took advantage of that like no tomorrow, and I'm so glad I did. And also, a few classics have been preserved, like 3006 in the museum fleet, while many others, including 7905, 7400, as well as others, have been preserved by private owners elsewhere. But wherever they are, I'm pretty sure one day they'll return to the transit fan spotlight. So as for these classics, they're gone, but definitely not forgotten. So with that said, this is Kal-El, and thanks for watching.